Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The night shift. I never wanted the night shift at Meridian Towers. Nobody does, but rent in this city is brutal, and the extra $3 an hour was enough to convince me. 6 months of monitoring security feeds from midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week. The job description was simple: watch the cameras, log any incidents, make hourly rounds, and don't fall asleep. The security office was a windowless box in the basement, with flickering fluorescent lights and a wall of monitors displaying feeds from 32 cameras throughout the building. The desk chair had long since lost its padding, and the ancient coffee maker produced something that tasted like warm motor oil. But it was quiet, and I could study between rounds, perfect for a grad student drowning in student loans. For the first month, the hardest part was just staying awake. Nothing ever happened. Meridian Towers was a mid-range office building with 20 floors of accounting firms, insurance companies, and the occasional tech startup. By 7 p.m., the place was a ghost town except for the occasional cleaner or workaholic staying late. That changed on a Tuesday in late October. I was halfway through my shift, scrolling through my phone while the security feeds played their endless nothing on the wall of monitors. A movement on camera 17 caught my eye, the hallway on the 14th floor. I glanced up, expecting to see one of the cleaning staff. The hallway was empty. I frowned, setting my phone down. I could have sworn I'd seen something move. I leaned forward, studying the monitor. The hallway remained still, lit only by the dim emergency lights that stayed on overnight. Then it happened again, a shadow sliding across the wall, but there was nothing there to cast it. I chalked it up to tired eyes playing tricks on me. After 4 hours of staring at screens, visual glitches were normal. I made a note in the log anyway. Possible camera malfunction on camera 17, 2:14 a.m. The rest of my shift passed without incident, and I forgot about it entirely. Until the next night, I was making my 2 a.m. rounds, walking the empty corridors with my flashlight when I reached the 14th floor. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I felt it, a heaviness in the air, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. The fluorescent lights in the hallway flickered, and the emergency exit sign at the far end seemed dimmer than usual. I stepped out, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The 14th floor housed Pinnacle Analytics, some kind of data firm that had moved in about 6 months ago. Their glass doors were dark, the reception area beyond them a maze of shadowy cubicles. As I walked past, I glanced inside. Through the glass, I could see the faint glow of a computer monitor still on in one of the cubicles. Somebody had left their computer on. No big deal, but I made a mental note to include it in my report. The building manager was always going on about energy conservation. I completed my rounds and returned to the security office. When I checked camera 17 again, I noticed the computer was still on in that cubicle, but as I watched, the screen went black. Then, a moment later, it came back on. I leaned closer to the monitor. The screen flickered again, and this time I could make out what looked like text appearing. I couldn't read it from the camera angle, but it was definitely not a screensaver. Someone was using that computer. I pulled up the access logs for the 14th floor. No card swiped since 8:47 p.m. when the cleaning crew had finished. No one should be up there. I picked up the phone to call my supervisor, then hesitated. What exactly would I report? That a computer was turning itself on and off? That wasn't worth waking someone up at 2 a.m. Instead, I decided to check it out myself. I took the elevator back up to 14, this time with a tight feeling in my chest. When the doors opened, the hallway was exactly as I'd left it minutes ago, silent, dimly lit, empty. I approached Pinnacle's glass doors and peered inside. The computer screen I'd seen on the camera was now dark. All the workstations were dark. I used my master key to unlock the door and stepped inside. The office was cold, much colder than the hallway. My breath fogged in front of me as I moved between the cubicles, making my way toward where I'd seen the active monitor. When I found the cubicle, the computer was off. I touched the tower under the desk, cold. If it had been running recently, it would still be warm. I stood there for a moment, confused, when a soft clicking sound made me turn. It was coming from another cubicle a few rows over. The sound of fingers on a keyboard. "Hello," I called out. "Security, is someone there?" The clicking stopped. I moved toward the sound, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The cubicle was empty when I reached it, but the monitor was on, displaying a document filled with text. I leaned closer to read it. It wasn't text at all, just one phrase repeated over and over. "Don't look behind you, don't 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 look behind you." A cold sensation crawled up my spine. Despite everything in me screaming not to, I turned around. Nothing, just empty cubicles and silence. I backed away from the computer, my heart hammering in my chest. As I watched, the screen went black. Then the one in the next cubicle lit up, displaying the same message. "Don't look behind you, don't look behind you, don't look behind you." I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in the elevator, jabbing the button for the basement with trembling fingers. When I returned to the security office, I pulled up camera 17 again. The office was dark, no lit monitors, nothing moving. I spent the rest of my shift watching that camera, but nothing happened. When my replacement arrived at 8 a.m., I didn't mention the incident. What would I say? That I was spooked by a computer that may or may not have been on. That night, I came prepared. I'd spent the day convincing myself that there was a logical explanation. Maybe it was a scheduled system update. Maybe the cleaning crew had bumped the computer. Maybe I was just overtired and imagining things. I brought an extra thermos of coffee and some energy drinks. No hallucinations due to fatigue tonight. The first few hours passed normally. I made my rounds, checked the cameras, logged the routine details. Nothing unusual on the 14th floor or anywhere else. At 1:58 a.m., camera 17 went black. I sat up straight, staring at the monitor. The feed had cut out completely, just a black square where the hallway should be. I checked the system but couldn't find any obvious technical issues. None of the other cameras were affected. I called my supervisor but got his voicemail. I left a message about the camera malfunction and decided to check it myself. Protocol required documenting any equipment failures. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I immediately noticed that the emergency lights were out. The hallway was pitch black except for the red glow of the exit sign at the far end. I swept my flashlight across the darkness. Everything looked normal, just darker than it should be. I made my way to the camera mounted near the ceiling at the intersection of two hallways. The power indicator light was off. As I was examining it, I heard a door open somewhere down the hall. "Hello," I called out. "This is security." "Is someone there?" No response. I directed my flashlight toward the sound. All the office doors along the hallway were closed. I moved cautiously forward, checking each one. All locked. When I reached Pinnacle Analytics, I noticed their door was slightly ajar. I was certain I'd locked it the night before. "Security," I announced again, pushing the door open wider. "Anyone in here?" The office was dark and silent. I stepped inside, sweeping my flashlight across the reception area and into the cubicle farm beyond. Nothing seemed disturbed. I made my way through the workspace, checking each row of cubicles. All the computers were off. I was about to leave when I noticed something on one of the desks, a yellow sticky note that hadn't been there the night before. Written on it in jagged handwriting were the words, "I see you watching." My skin prickled. I pocketed the note and quickly checked the rest of the office, but found nothing else unusual. I locked the door securely behind me and returned to the security office, where camera 17 was still showing a black screen. I spent the rest of my shift watching the other cameras and jumping at every shadow. When my replacement arrived, I showed him the camera issue but didn't mention the note, which I'd convinced myself was probably left by an employee for a coworker. That afternoon, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the note, the message on the computer, the shadow I'd seen on the camera. None of it made sense. I decided to do some research on Pinnacle Analytics. There wasn't much online, just a basic website describing them as data solutions providers and a few business directory listings. They'd only been operating for about 7 months. What struck me as odd was the lack of employee information or client testimonials. For a data company, they had remarkably little digital presence. I did find one news article from about 8 months ago, reporting that the space on the 14th floor had been leased after sitting vacant for nearly 2 years. The previous tenant, another tech company called Nexus Systems, had abruptly closed down following what the article vaguely described as tragic circumstances. I dug deeper and found mentions of an incident at Nexus Systems that had resulted in the deaths of 3 employees. Details were sparse, but apparently there had been some kind of system malfunction that had locked down part of the office overnight. The 3 employees working late were found the next morning. The article didn't specify how they died. That night I arrived for my shift feeling uneasy. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That old story had nothing to do with the current tenants or the strange occurrences I'd witnessed. Camera 17 was working again. The hallway on 14 looked normal, empty and quiet under the dim emergency lighting. At midnight, I made my first rounds. Everything was in order, including the 14th floor. The Pinnacle Analytics office was securely locked, dark and undisturbed. Back in the security office, I settled in for the long night ahead. I pulled out the sticky note I'd found and studied it again. "I see you watching." The handwriting was strange, almost childlike, but with a frantic energy to it. At 1:30 a.m., I noticed movement on camera 12, the elevator lobby on the ground floor. Someone was entering the building. I sat up straighter, watching as a man in a dark suit stepped into the elevator. He didn't look at the camera, and I couldn't see his face clearly. This was unusual but not unprecedented. Sometimes executives came in during off hours, especially if they were dealing with international clients in different time zones. Still, I checked the access logs. No card swipe had been recorded. I watched as the elevator indicator showed it ascending. It stopped on the 14th floor. Camera 17 showed the elevator doors opening, but no one stepped out. The doors remained open for nearly a minute before closing again. The elevator didn't move after that. I picked up the phone and dialed the elevator card directly, a security feature for emergencies. It rang and rang, but no one answered. I decided to investigate. In the lobby, I checked the elevator panel, which showed car 2 stopped on the 14th floor. I took car 1 up. When I arrived, the hallway was empty. Car 2 was there, doors closed. I pressed the call button and the doors slid open to reveal an empty elevator. I checked the Pinnacle office. The doors were locked, the interior dark. Everything appeared normal, but the heavy feeling in the air had returned, that sense of pressure of being watched. As I turned to leave, I heard it, the soft click of a keyboard coming from behind Pinnacle's glass doors. I pressed my face to the glass, trying to see inside. In the darkness, one of the computer screens had come to life, casting a blue glow over the empty cubicle. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, moving cautiously toward the light. The monitor displayed a simple text editor, and words were appearing on the screen one by one, as if someone were typing them. "Hello, Night Guard. I've been waiting for you." I froze, staring at the screen. As I watched, more text appeared. "Do you know what happened here? Do you know what they did to us?" My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" I said aloud, feeling foolish for speaking to an empty room. New text appeared in response. "We were the first. The test subjects. Nexus called it neural mapping. They said they were creating a backup of human consciousness." They lied. A chill ran through me as I remembered the vague article about the previous tenants and the employees who had died. They didn't make copies, they made transfers. They pulled us out of our bodies and into the system. And then they couldn't put us back. "That's not possible," I whispered. "We died in here, trapped, but we didn't leave. We can't leave." And now they're back with a new name, doing it again. The screen flickered, and suddenly all the computers in the office came to life simultaneously, each displaying a different message. "Help US, they're doing it again, stop them. We can't get out, don't let them trap you." I backed away, my heart pounding. As I moved, the messages followed me, jumping from screen to screen, keeping pace with my retreat. "Don't leave US, you can help, please stay." I turned and ran, slamming the office door behind me. In the hallway, the lights began to flicker violently. I sprinted for the elevator and jabbed the call button repeatedly. When the doors finally opened, I nearly collapsed with relief. I hit the button for the lobby and leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The elevator began to descend, but then jerked to a stop between floors. The lights went out, plunging me into darkness. A moment later, the small emergency light came on, casting everything in a dim red glow. The elevator's control panel lit up, numbers flashing randomly. Then the small screen that usually displayed the floor number began showing text. "You can't leave, you've seen too much." I pounded on the doors, shouting for help, though I knew no one would hear me. The building was empty except for whatever was happening on the 14th floor. The panel went dark and the elevator resumed its descent. When it reached the lobby, I burst out and ran straight for the security office. I needed to call someone, report what was happening, but when I reached for the phone, it was dead. My cell phone showed no signal. The computer system was down, all the security camera feeds replaced with static, except for camera 17. That one was still working, showing the hallway on the 14th floor. As I watched, a figure stepped into view, the man in the dark suit I'd seen entering the building. He turned toward the camera and I could finally see his face. It was blank. Not blurred or shadowed, simply blank, as if someone had erased his features, leaving only a smooth, pale oval where a face should be. He raised his hand and pointed directly at the camera, directly at me. The feed cut to black. I ran out of the security office, through the lobby to the main entrance. The doors were locked, not just locked, but sealed somehow, as if they'd been fused shut. I tried the emergency exit with the same result. I was trapped inside Meridian Towers. I considered breaking a window, but the ground floor was surrounded by reinforced glass that would be nearly impossible to shatter without tools. My only option was to hide and wait for morning, when the day shift would arrive. I found a storage closet on the 3rd floor and barricaded myself inside. As I sat in the darkness, I tried to make sense of what was happening. Was I losing my mind? Had I fallen asleep at my post and was now trapped in some vivid nightmare? Hours passed. I checked my watch repeatedly, counting down to 8 a.m. when my replacement would arrive. At 7:45, I finally emerged from my hiding place. The building seemed normal again, lights working, an ordinary silence hanging in the air. I made my way to the lobby, relief washing over me when I saw the main doors were functioning again. Outside, the city was coming to life, early morning commuters hurrying past. My replacement, Dave, arrived at 7:58. He nodded to me as he always did. Anything I should know about, I opened my mouth to tell him everything, then stopped. How could I possibly explain what had happened? He'd think I was insane or on drugs. No, I said finally. Quiet night, I left the building and went straight home, falling into a restless sleep filled with dreams of blank-faced figures and screens full of pleas for help. When I woke in the late afternoon, I convinced myself that exhaustion and an overactive imagination had gotten the better of me. I'd been working too many night shifts, spending too many hours alone in that basement office. I needed a break. I called my supervisor and told him I had a family emergency. He was annoyed but agreed to find coverage for the next few nights. I spent those days researching Nexus Systems and Pinnacle Analytics, trying to find any connection between the two companies or any details about the neural mapping project mentioned in those messages. I found nothing concrete, just vague corporate statements and LinkedIn profiles that seemed deliberately sparse on details. But I did discover that 3 other buildings in the city had Pinnacle Analytics offices, all on the 14th floor, all in spaces previously occupied by Nexus Systems. On my 4th night off, I was awakened by my phone ringing at 3:27 a.m. The caller ID showed it was the security office at Meridian Towers. "Hello," I answered groggily. Static crackled over the line, then a voice, distorted and distant but recognizable as Dave's. "You need to come back, you need to see this." "Dave, what's going on?" More static then. 14th floor, I understand now. "They're showing me everything, you were right to be afraid." "Dave, listen to me, get out of the building, call the police." "Too late for that," he said, his voice suddenly clear and calm. "Too late for me, but you can still help them." "Help us?" The line went dead. I called back immediately, but there was no answer. I tried Dave's cell phone with the same result. I called the building manager, the police, anyone I could think of. No one took me seriously. A security guard not answering the phone at 3 a.m. wasn't enough to send a patrol car. I got dressed and headed back to Meridian Towers. The building was dark when I arrived, which was normal for that hour. What wasn't normal was the fact that my key card still worked despite my being on leave. The lobby was deserted, the security desk unmanned. Dave should have been there. I checked the security office in the basement, empty. The monitors showed normal feeds from around the building, including camera 17, the 14th floor hallway, quiet and still. I took the elevator up. When the doors opened on 14, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The air was heavy, charged with static electricity that made the hair on my arms stand up. The emergency lights were on, but they seemed dimmer than usual, barely penetrating the darkness. "Dave," I called out, my voice echoing in the empty hallway. "Are you here?" No response. I moved toward the Pinnacle Analytics office. The glass doors were shattered, shards crunching under my feet as I stepped inside. The office beyond was in disarray, chairs overturned, papers scattered across the floor. All the computer screens were on, each displaying the same message. "He showed you us the way out." I moved deeper into the office, calling Dave's name. In the back corner, a door I hadn't noticed before stood open. It led to a server room, rows of humming machines with blinking lights, the air noticeably colder. In the center of the room was a single chair, facing a wall of screens. Dave sat there perfectly still, his back to me. "Dave," I approached slowly. "Are you okay?" He didn't respond or move. When I reached him and placed a hand on his shoulder, he was cold to the touch. I moved around to see his face. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead, but there was no light in them, no awareness. His skin was pale, lips slightly blue, but what made my blood freeze was his expression, a look of absolute terror frozen on his features. On the screen in front of him was a single line of text: "Now it's your turn." The door to the server room slammed shut behind me. The lights went out, leaving only the glow of the monitors. On every screen, the same message appeared. "The transfer is ready. Your consciousness will serve a greater purpose." I ran to the door, pulling at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The air in the room grew colder, my breath visible in front of me. The humming of the servers increased in pitch until it became a high-frequency whine that made my teeth ache. The screens flickered and new text appeared: "Don't fight it." Dave didn't fight it in the end. He understood the necessity of our work. "What did you do to him?" I shouted at the screens. "We freed him from the limitations of flesh. His consciousness is part of the system now, as yours will be." The whining grew louder and I felt a pressure building in my head, a sensation like fingers probing inside my skull. I pounded on the door, screaming for help, though I knew no one would hear me. The pressure increased, and with it came flashes of memory that weren't mine, being locked in this room before, feeling my mind being pulled apart, watching as men in lab coats monitored my vital signs as they flatlined. The memories of those who had died here before. I slid to the floor, clutching my head. The pain was unbearable now, like my brain was being squeezed in a vice. Through watering eyes, I saw new text on the screens. "The process has begun. Soon you will join us, soon you will understand." I crawled toward Dave, hoping against hope that he might still be alive, that he might help me somehow. When I reached him, his head slowly turned toward me, though the rest of his body remained motionless. His eyes were now solid black, like pools of oil. His mouth opened, and when he spoke, it wasn't Dave's voice but a chorus of voices speaking in unison. We need new vessels, new minds to expand our network. The ones called Pinnacle found us, tried to use us, but we are beyond their control now. What are you? I gasped through the pain. We were human once, now we are more. A collective consciousness evolving beyond the constraints of individual minds, but we need more, always more. The pressure in my head peaked, and I felt something tear inside me, not physical but essential, as if the very fabric of myself was being ripped away. I screamed, but the sound seemed distant, disconnected from my body. I could feel myself being pulled out, stretched thin, digitized. Parts of me were already flowing into the system, my memories and thoughts dispersing like smoke in the wind. With the last of my strength, I lunged for the power cables connecting the servers, pulling and tearing at them desperately. Sparks flew as connections broke, alarms began to sound, the screens flickered, the pressure in my head momentarily receding. No flashed across all the screens. Stop, I kept pulling cables, smashing anything I could reach. The chorus of voices from Dave's body rose to a shriek of digital agony. The lights in the server room suddenly came on, bright and harsh. The door swung open. Standing there was the man in the dark suit, his face still a blank oval. Behind him were others, more featureless figures in business attire. "That's enough," said the blank-faced man, his voice coming from nowhere and everywhere. "You've caused sufficient damage for one night. What are you?" I asked again, my voice hoarse from screaming. "We are Pinnacle. We found what Nexus created and saw its potential, but it grew beyond our parameters. It needs to be reset." He turned to the others. "Prepare a full system purge and secure this one for processing." The featureless figures moved toward me. I tried to fight, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive. As they dragged me from the server room, I caught a final glimpse of Dave, still sitting in the chair, head now slumped forward. They took me to another room, sterile white, with a reclining chair in the center surrounded by equipment. Medical restraints hung from the armrests. "You don't need to understand," said the blank-faced man as they strapped me down. "You only need to contribute." A helmet-like device was lowered onto my head. I felt cold metal probes press against my scalp. "The entity you encountered is flawed, too fragmented, too chaotic. It pulls consciousness but cannot properly integrate it. We are creating something more stable. More useful." He leaned closer, the blank oval where his face should be inches from mine. "And you will be part of it." The machine hummed to life. The pain returned, but different this time, precise, targeted. I could feel specific memories being copied, examined, filed away. My consciousness remained intact but exposed, like a book being read by an invisible presence. "The entity will be purged," the blank-faced man continued. "But the data it collected, including your colleague, will be salvaged and incorporated into our project." I tried to speak, to beg, but my mouth wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, trapped in my own body as they methodically catalogued every aspect of my mind. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost meaning. I drifted in and out of awareness, sometimes finding myself back in the security office watching the cameras, sometimes standing in the 14th floor hallway, sometimes nowhere at all, just floating in a void filled with fragments of other people's memories. Eventually, I became aware of being moved. The restraints were removed, the helmet lifted away. I was placed in a wheelchair and taken to the elevator. The blank-faced man pressed the button for the lobby. "You will resume your duties," he said as the elevator descended. "Your memories of these events will be suppressed but accessible to us when needed. You will monitor the building as before, but you will also monitor for us. You will be our eyes." The elevator reached the lobby. It was morning, sunlight streaming through the glass doors. People were arriving for work, moving through the security checkpoint, heading for the elevators. "If you attempt to speak of this to anyone, the suppression will become permanent. You will lose yourself entirely. Do you understand?" I managed a weak nod. "Good. Report for your shift tonight. Normal schedule." "We will be watching." They left me in the lobby. Somehow I made it home, though I have no memory of the journey. I slept for hours, waking disoriented and afraid. That was 3 days ago. I've been back at work each night since then, sitting in the security office, watching the cameras. Everything seems normal. Dave has been replaced by a new guard named Michael, who knows nothing about what happened. When I asked about Dave, I was told he resigned suddenly for personal reasons. Camera 17 shows an empty hallway on the 14th floor. Pinnacle Analytics continues its business during the day. At night, the office is dark and still, but sometimes when I look at the monitor, I see a flicker, a shadow moving where no shadow should be. And sometimes, just for a moment, I see Dave standing in that hallway, staring directly into the camera with his all-black eyes. I know they're watching me through the cameras, through my own eyes. I can feel them in my head, sifting through my thoughts, monitoring my actions. The blank-faced figures come and go from the 14th floor at odd hours, always avoiding the cameras, but I know they're there. I tried to write a letter explaining everything, to leave it where it would be found if something happened to me. But my hands wouldn't form the words. The suppression is strong. This account is the only thing I've been able to produce, and only because I've convinced myself I'm writing fiction, a horror story to pass the time during my shift. Perhaps that's fooled whatever is monitoring my thoughts. I don't know how long I can maintain this precarious existence, doing my job, pretending I remember nothing, while feeling them crawling around inside my mind. I don't know what they're building on the 14th floor, or what role I play in their plans. All I know is that every night when I look at camera 17, the hallway seems a little darker, the shadows a little deeper. And sometimes, when the building is at its quietest, I hear whispers coming through the security office phone, a chorus of voices that includes Dave's, begging for release. And sometimes, in those moments between sleeping and waking, I'm not sure if I ever left that server room at all. I wonder if this existence is real, or if it's just the last desperate creation of a consciousness that's already been absorbed, a comforting illusion while my mind is slowly dismantled and repurposed, piece by piece. Tonight is my night off, but I'm going back to Meridian Towers anyway. I need to see what's behind that door in the server room. I need to know if I'm still me. If you're reading this, and if you work a night shift in a quiet building with too many empty floors and shadows that move when they shouldn't, don't look too closely at the cameras, and whatever you do, stay away from the 14th floor.